It is Thursday, the 4th of April, 2024 at Protestia Studios, and this is your intelligence briefing coming to you from Protestia.com, where you can go to get all the latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. Sign up for the Insurgency email list and support us on Patreon over at patreon.com/Protestia. Thank you for joining us. Let's get into the headlines. First headline at Protestia.com. Good news, Christian college closing after 168 years. Of course, this wouldn't seem like good news at first glance, but let's read on. According to a report from the Christian Post, a Christian college with ties to the United Methodist Church is closing after 168 years, unable to keep its doors open any longer amid a raft of financial struggles. The Birmingham Southern College in Alabama was initially founded in 1856 by Methodist missionaries as Southern University, but merged with Birmingham College in 1918. Like most things tied to the United Methodist Church, the college, which boasts 1,300 students, eventually went off the rails into apostasy and heresy, perhaps best seen with their commitment to diversity and inclusion through their Safe Zone program, which is fully affirming of LGBTQ folk, or their chapel group, which hosts interfaith worship services. You can read more about this over at Protestia.com, but safe to say that any college claiming to be promoting anything biblical or anything in the name of Jesus who is not doing so, we would celebrate that stopping by any means that it needs to happen. Well, any legal means that it needs to happen, let's be clear. Next headline over at Protestia, Richard Dawkins declares himself a Christian, sorta. This by Paul Brown over at Protestia. Evolutionary biologist and outspoken atheist Richard Dawkins has consistently mocked creationists. Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, advances the popular notion amongst scientists that Christians are fools for believing that an all-knowing, all-powerful creator purposefully spoke the universe into existence in a way that demonstrates his existence. Dawkins reigns as a self-made god of atheism, praised at the altar of evolutionary biology studies alongside fellow New Atheism movement leaders Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett, and Christopher Hitchens, who met his maker in 2011. Adherents of atheism worship these men as the four horsemen of the non-apocalypse, a reference that mocks the judgment and wrath brought by the four horsemen in Revelation 6. Let's move down here a little bit, and it seemed to me when I saw this at first that Richard Dawkins was basically saying that Christianity is better than other traditions. I don't think that he is in any way saying that he's a believer in Jesus Christ or something like that. He calls himself a cultural Christian. So he says he loves hymns, Christmas carols, and I sort of feel at home in the Christian ethos. And let me tell you why that's the case, because the Christian ethos sees God not as forcing people to believe in him, but contains a freedom, a God-given freedom to choose. Every believer, or every unbeliever, every person will be held responsible for their response to God. And the general equity of that in a Christian society, especially in a Western Christian society, is the freedom to believe in Looney Tune things like atheism, and without fear that somebody is going to harm you or throw you into prison or something like that. And that's a benefit of Christianity in a way that it is not a benefit of belief systems like Islam and whatnot. So I believe that's what Dawkins is getting at here. There's a link to, or an embed here to a tweet in the article to see from himself. I would commend the article here by Paul Brown to you over at Protestia.com to read more about Richard Dawkins declaring himself a Christian, sorta. Next headline at Protestia, Lecrae recounts attending parties where sex orgies broke out at 1 a.m. with famous rap mogul Diddy in the news for throwing wild sex parties. Deconstructed rap artist Lecrae has weighed in with his experiences being around this sort of activity. During a recent episode of his podcast, Lecrae details how he would occasionally, or regularly perhaps, attend celebrity parties with artists like Diddy, where orgies and sex parties would take place, detailing a couple of encounters. Let's go down to, I believe there's a video clip here, and listen to it from him.
What I will say is at one particular party, lots of big names, there was an artist there who said, "Hey, Lecrae, around 1 a.m., make sure you're not here. And I was like, what? You just don't want to be here at 1 in the morning. And I was like, now my pride kicked in like, yo, you don't know me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I can handle myself. Like, I'm not some little church boy who ain't never seen nothing. Like, I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what you talking about? Well, it's probably 12:30. I'm downstairs. I go downstairs to the studio. I come up out the studio and I'm headed back upstairs to like the main area where everyone's kind of congregating and hanging out. And the music changed. It was like really hard and heavy at first. And then, you know, like jam and dancing music. And it was a little softer. You know, it was a little more sensual when I came out the studio and started going upstairs. And on my way upstairs, there's like this couch. I won't say how the couch is designed because then that may give away whose party and whose house this was. There was a couch, and on the couch,
interesting, he won't say whose party
I saw a couple of guys really going at it hard and heavy. And man, and I was like, oh, you know, my brain, I'm thinking, well, you know, this celebrity party, people do what they do. As I started moving upstairs, I passed them up and I noticed that it wasn't just those two guys. It was more and more people just going at it. I was like, okay, it's time for me to roll. I'm going to grab my stuff and I'm going to get up out of here. I did not know that's how this went down. So was that shocking? Absolutely. Was I forced or coerced into anything? I was not. But why they felt that comfortable, I don't know. Maybe the invite list, they was like, yeah, all these people, I don't know. I'm shocked that it went down. But I've been to another situation, another person's party, celebrity party, and, you know, a celebrity tapped me on my shoulder and I was hanging out with them and they was like, yo, nephew, you might want to go into the other party because this cabana, we about to close it up. And they closed up the cabana and there was about 3 or 4 big name artists in there.
I think you can see where this is going, but commenting on the occasion, the dissenter, we have a link to this right under the video. Jeff over at the dissenter says, gross. Why would he want to be at a party with such things going on? I don't care if he felt forced or coerced to participate or not. He was participating in it just by his very presence. The fact that he's abandoned the church to intertwine himself in this lifestyle, whether or not he feels forced to participate in the sex, speaks volumes about him. The fact that he feels comfortable enough to be there and to lay his eyes on such filth, not just once, but repeatedly, speaks to the state of his soul, because we know it isn't just about sex parties after certain hours. These events are fully blasphemous, God-hating events. You could read more about this over at Proteste. We also have links to Lecrae talking about how he regularly watches pornographic TV shows. He stopped going to church. He rebuked a street preacher for preaching the gospel, so on and so forth. Next headline at Protestia.com, Jordan Peterson's wife becomes a Roman Catholic on Easter, credits the rosary for healing her of rare cancer. This is an article over at Catholic News Agency. We have a link at the bottom, but I'll read a little bit. Tammy Peterson, wife of psychologist and author Dr. Jordan Peterson, plans to enter the Catholic Church this Easter. Editor's note, she did become a member at Holy Rosary Church in Toronto. In an interview with ETWN News In Depth, she shares about the powerful role the rosary has played in her faith journey and in her physical healing from cancer. This is I would say an unfortunate development, as Jordan Peterson has been sort of, let's say, toying around or dipping his toe in the water of Christian orthodoxy, I would argue, for some time, and yet has not arrived at the truth. Unfortunately, his wife becoming a Roman Catholic, which with the false gospel that they proclaim, is a step in the wrong direction. Potentially a step in the right direction as far as civic participation, but certainly not in terms of the state of her eternal soul. You can read more about this at Protestia, where we have a link over to the original article at Catholic News Agency. Next headline at Protestia, estimate Christian religious leaders to embezzle $86 million in 2024. This is a curated post from Trinity Phi. The January issue of the International Bulletin of Mission Research, IBMR, reports that Christian religious leaders are estimated to embezzle $86 million in 2024. excuse me, 86 billion with a B in 2024. The disturbing statistic, which is easy to overlook, appears in Table 5 of the article World Christianity 2024 Fragmentation and Unity under the description Ecclesiastical Crime. There's a link over here at Protestia to head over to Trinity Phi and check that out for yourself. The study being done by data scientists Gina Zurlo and Dr. Todd Johnson and Peter Crossing at the Center for the Study of Global Christianity at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. Next headline at Protestia, prominent church launches copyright strike against apologist for video critical of Benny Hinn. A prominent apologist is crying foul, that's Mike Winger, after a ministry associated with Benny Hinn claims a copyright strike against him, unjustly targeting him on account of the video critical of the famed arch heretic. So Winger released a 4-hour-long blistering critique of Hinn, which we have linked here in the article. And then this on Twitter from I want to say a day ago, 2 days ago, Mike Winger said, I asked that the Jesus Image revoke their false copyright claim on my video about victims of Benny Hinn. I am clearly within fair use. And yes, we would agree he is clearly within fair use. Believe they are abusing YouTube's automated copyright system to subvert fair use law. The claim is unjust. At the moment, I don't know how deliberate or targeted it is. It could be that they pay a service to simply copyright claim everything they can, regardless of how just it is. This is bad, but it wouldn't be targeted or anything. Or it could be that they are well aware my video is critical of Benny and reflects poorly on them. I think that's more likely. We've put up clips of Benny Hinn and whatnot before and not been struck this way. Either way, the claim is false and an abuse of the system. I request it be revoked immediately. They claim 35 seconds of footage. The footage is clearly within the principles that establish fair use. Again, totally agree. It is transformative, part of an educational critique, not comprising the heart of the work, nor replacing the potential market for the original work. Agree, agree, and agree. It's not the first time Winger has had to deal with copyright claims from bad actors. And he talks about, we've also reached out, Protestia that is, we've reached out to Jesus Image and will update the article accordingly if they get back to us. Next headline, Pope Francis says Pope Benedict backed him up in supporting civil marriages for LGBTQ couples. So this is Pope Francis making a claim about his predecessor, Pope Benedict, who he claims now as an ally who backed him up when he mapped out his support for civil partnerships for same-sex couples, according to the new book, The Successor, My Memories of Benedict the 16th, which he released on Tuesday. In 2020, Francis confirmed his support for this perversion. We have links here in the article, saying at the time, homosexual people have a right to be in a family. They are children of God. What we have to have is a civil union law. So again, the Roman Catholic Pope here dipping his toes in the water back just a few years ago with definitional boundaries being up for grabs between things, civil unions versus marriages. So you can read more about this over at Protestia, but safe to say, it's not that we think that any Roman Catholic is saved believing what they believe, but Pope Francis is a special brand of awful. Next headline, last headline for this intelligence briefing. Luther Seminary's preaching conference features trans preacher who called Jesus a son of a bleep. Luther Seminary's preaching conference is just around the corner, and it's featuring a transgender pastor who famously called Jesus a son of a bleep. Every year, Luther Seminary of the ELCA puts on the Festival of Homiletics, featuring the who's who of apostate wolflings, and whose goal is to help attendees, quote, relearn ways to care for the craft of preaching and discover new habits that support the preaching life. Right. In other words, like new ways to interpret scripture without actually, literally reading it or interpreting it or actually teaching you what it says. And it's featuring, of course, I hate to say this, but it leads right back to Colorado. It tends to always do that. The former pastor, quote unquote, of Westview Church in Boulder, Colorado, has now served as the faith work director of the denomination's National LGBTQ Task Force, where he's free to spread the message of queer social contagion and transiting the kids with unfettered access and impunity. We know him as the ELCA's first transgender Latina pastor, as well as recounting a profile in NBC News to mark the occasion when he said this about the Lord of Glory. Garcia's marriage crumbled after 8 years, and his wife asked for a divorce in 2022 after they separated. Garcia was sitting at his kitchen table, and by the way, we've changed the pronouns to align with reality here, as you can probably see if you read this article, wondering why he had thrown away what seemed like an ideal life. This man, who is pretending to be a woman now, said, "I had my come to Jesus moment. It wasn't one of those, oh please help me," he explained. It was more, "All right, you son of a bleep, if I'm going to come back, you better step it up this time," saying this to God. Apparently charming and completely on brand for the Jesus-hating gulag of sin that is the ELCA. This is the picture here of the gentleman dressed up in the costume of a woman and who knows what else. Anyway, on that happy note, we're going to call it for this episode of the Intelligence Briefing. Stay tuned to Protestia.com for all of your latest in Christian polemics and discernment news. We will see you again next time. As always, Semper Reformanda.